Shrek 2 is the greatest movie in the history of movies to ever be made. When the topic of cinematic masterpieces is brought into conversation, you can pull out your Citizen Kanes,
Monkey,
your The Usual Suspects,
She sells seashells on a seashore, but the value...
your Delta Force 2, The Colombian Connection, but for my money, you cannot reach the levels of comedy and action, as well as the forays into the themes of self-worth and surface-scratching racism and elitism that plagues the upper class that is obtained in this 2004 sequel. Now, before I get started, I know Pyrocynical did his video on Shrek in 2018, so before anyone comments,
"You're just copying Pyro, delete your channel and your life."
I have two things to say. One, it's one of my favourite videos and I definitely take some inspiration from him, but I have put some time into making my points, so any feedback is much appreciated. And two, shut up. This movie is very much loved by a dedicated fanbase, and the movie now being 17 years old. Jesus Christ. There's not a lot about it that hasn't been said already, but I want to look past the memes that plague your WhatsApp group chats and look more specifically at some character dynamics. To be more accurate, my favourite character dynamic of the movie, King Harold and the Fairy Godmother. When I say this, I quite literally mean, in the most sincere and unironic sense, Shrek 2 did not have to go this hard on self-image struggles and elitism. In a film that has mutant donkey dragon babies, my favourite character, King Harold, is given a backstory so subtly alluded to, yet it has meaning that speaks to me as well as the struggles other characters in the show go through. I am, of course, talking about the shock twist that the ugly stepsister is voiced by none other than Larry King. Oh, and Harry's a frog. Foreshadowing and subtle Easter eggs to this Todd Phillips-esque twist have been peppered throughout the movie, and while some of the stuff I'll be talking about can be put down to little teasers, there are some deeper hidden secrets that only the well-cultured such as myself was able to pick out. Conrad Vernon, Kelly Asperger's, and Dwight from The Walking Dead, you've outdone yourselves.
I hope you're happy.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about names. Any storyteller worth their salt will tell you that there is a reason behind the naming of characters. This is especially the case for the king and queen in this story, Harold and Lillian. The name Harold is a direct nod to the original Grimm fable, The Frog Prince. The famous story, also known as Iron Henry, tells the story of a princess who befriends a frog after he retrieved her golden ball. The princess would later break the ball, which would undo the frog's curse and turn him into a prince. The prince in this story, who had a servant named Henry, as in Iron Henry, who was otherwise known as Harry, which is also short for Harold, and the queen's name is Lillian. Lillian. Yeah? Now, let's jump into the movie. This violent film opens with a narration of your typical princess in a tower. Much like the first film, the notion is that this fairy tale is being read in these films from the perspective of a naive character. In the first movie, Shrek wipes his shit with the pages because he does not believe in the princess meets prince and falls in love, typical convention, but ends up becoming the princess's saviour. In Shrek 2, Prince Charming reads the story with passion, as he believes it's his destiny to be that prince because he fits the norms that his society believes to be fitting of a prince. It's a dark reflection of the world we live in, where children are grown up being told that they are something special, resulting in the manifestation of monsters that think they are entitled to what they want. The first Easter egg is seen within these pages. The borders, accompanied by the royal crest of the far, far away kingdom, contain lily pads and tadpoles, froggish nature very much attached to the lore of the king and his family. We skip ahead to Shrek, Fiona and Donkey's arrival in Far, Far Away, a half-satirical, half-whimsical take on modern-day Hollywood, a kingdom of eye-catching attractions, gorgeous skylines, and white people. After Shrek and Fiona step out of their carriage, it is met with shock. Why? Because they are the only people of colour in this entire movie.
oh boy, here I go killing again.
Except for Donkey, of course. Shout out to my Puerto Ricans. The dinner scene is one of the funnier moments of the film, but at the same time, very much a commentary on how upper-class society looks down on the average man. Snide remarks are made as well, including
an ogre from a swamp. Oh, how original.
As well as alluding to
his type, yes.
My type?
This could be substituted for any ethnic minority and would be seen as racist today. Zootopia, eat your heart out. We also get our first verbal hint towards Harold's froggish nature when Donkey refers to the queen by her name, Lillian.
Everybody dig in.
Don't mind if I do, Lillian.
As in Lillian. As in lily pad. Do you get it yet? Huh? We are then introduced to the fairy godmother, who is less a character entrusted as a friend to the parents of her goddaughter, and more of a magical on-call tycoon industrialist flying dwarf. After finding out Shrek is Fiona's husband, she's also met with shock.
I'd like you to meet my husband, Shrek.
Your husband?
Which we'll get back to later. We then see Harold and Lillian discussing the blowout that occurred. Harold is heard still verbally berating the ogre nature of the situation, refusing to give his blessing to the marriage.
I mean, you expect me to give my blessings to this thing?
The bedroom decor here can be seen sporting a green pattern and some lily pad tapestry, symbolizing the king's inability to separate himself from his true nature, even when in human form. Or maybe they have mold or something, who knows. We get more backstory of Harold and Lillian's love story, including them walking down by the lily pond and sharing their first kiss, suggesting this may have been the kiss that turned Harold into a human.
It's not the same! I don't think you realise that our daughter has married a monster!
Oh, stop being such a drama king.
Fine, pretend there's nothing wrong. La-di-da-di-da-di-da.
Wait a minute. What did he just say?
La-di-da-di-da-di-da.
Oh my lord. This may be the biggest shred of evidence to support my claims. King Harold just said, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. Now, if you are a cultured individual like me, you will have heard of the classic children's song, The Little Green Frog. The song goes as follows.
Who went the little green frog one day? Who went the little green frog? We all know frogs go la-di-da-di-da, la-di-da-di-da, la-di-da-di-da. We all know frogs go la-di-da-di-da.
The Wachowski brothers clearly went guns blazing when it came to the film's symbolism, which is why it won 5 People's Choice Awards and the prestigious Italian Online Movie Award for Best Animated Feature Film. Pixar are quaking in their boots as we speak. We see the return of the film's more sinister undertones, like blackmail and supremacy. The fairy godmother is revealed to have struck a deal of sorts with Harold and is holding him hostage, leveraging the situation to ensure her son, Prince Charming, will become king of Far, Far Away.
We made a deal, Harold, and I assume you don't want me to go back on my part.
Indeed not.
Being a being of immense magical power, it could have been easy for her to use magic to get what she wanted, but instead use it as a means to monopolize her control of the royal family by not only having the king in the palm of her hand, but also the kingdom if her son became king. The majority of the middle section is devoted to Shrek trying to do what he feels is best for Fiona, including the Garfield fight, murdering everyone in this factory, and drowning his sorrows.
Here's to us, Fiona.
Wait!
Before all this, however, we get a brief scene of Harold having a talk with Fiona regarding the argument between Shrek and herself. With Fiona criticizing Harold's closed-mindedness, he goes on to say,
Darling, I'm just thinking about what's best for you. Maybe you should do the same.
his point seems to come from a realistic point of view, that his kingdom will not accept ogres as part of the royal family, and he wants her to be accepted by all as a future queen. I mean, maybe Oprah could help you guys out? Does she exist in this universe? I mean, Simon Cowell does, so why not? After Shrek and Fiona turn sexy, but Charming is sexier, so Shrek gets depressed, we hear more malice from the fairy godmother. Harold, who is concerned that Fiona does not like this new Shrek that Charming is masquerading around as, wants to call the plan off. The fairy godmother then threatens to take away his happily ever after, just as she had given it to him.
I won't do it.
Oh, yes, you will. If you remember, I helped you with your happily ever after, and I can take it away just as easily. Is that what you want? Is it?
No.
This is the first time we see his hostage situation being so bluntly referenced, and the viewer is led to ask, what does she have on him? He is coerced into roofing his daughter a love potion, which he is only too happy to do. We see a softer conversation between Harold and Fiona, who is observing the red carpet from one of the taller towers, symbolizing how she feels lonely now with this new Shrek as she was when she was stuck in the tower from the first film. Fiona, not happy with the change that Shrek has undergone, is informed by Harold.
People change for the ones they love. You'd be surprised how much I changed for your mother.
The statement, while a sweeter change of pace for the backwards thinking king that had presided over the movie up until now, was very out of character. The viewer is left to wonder why this king is now embracing change, when up until now he seemed to prefer things to remain to the status quo. Is it because Shrek's white now? We now arrive to the final scene. After what is, and I mean this absolutely unironically, the best goddamn scene in the history of cinema. Fiona learns about the fake Shrek, and in a tense showdown, they kill the fairy godmother before she can start her Bonnie Tyler tribute band, but only after her spell rebounds off Harry and hits her. Uncle Vernon, rebounding spells of Harry which ultimately defeats the villain. Someone's been reading the Philosopher's Stone. We see that the king has been turned to a frog. As a child, you view this as a spell that has turned him into a frog, but growing up, you realize the fairy godmother was to hit Shrek with an anti-happily ever after spell. A happily never after spell, if you will. This gives birth to the twist that Harold had not been turned into a frog, but reverted to a frog. and his apology afterwards confirms it. He talks about how Fiona already has what is best for her, in spite of everything he has done up until now. We learn that early in the film, these ventures towards borderline racism and superiority were not bred from a place of greed and arrogance, but actually from someone who has been a frog his whole life. A frog who fell in love with a princess who loved him, who could never hope to marry her and be a rightful king, as the kingdom would never accept it. Plus, how would they bang? And so turn to a flying dwarf to make him more palatable to society, for the sake of the love he harboured for his wife. The ugly truth is that sometimes powerful emotions like love may make you desperate, and the desperate means you use may cause you to become something you are not. So don't forget to be more accepting of the differences between people. Ogres can be kings, just like frogs can. This is why Shrek 2 is the greatest movie of all time. That is until Shrek the Third.
Check out this kazing, baby. I mean, if it doesn't groove or what I'm saying ain't straight tripping, just say, oh, no you didn't.